He was so creepy.
He shows up and like Deanna is obviously like immediately like you can see she sees something in him, but then like he like shows up unannounced to her quarters
and just starts touching her.
And just if you watch that scene, just her body language, you're just like, I had to pause and like take a 10-minute break because I'm like, I just watched an assault.
It made me feel so creepy. Like it made me feel gross.
She was freezing up.
Yeah. You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh. Who needs rational when your toes curl up?
And I'm Ari, and I never lie when I've got sand in my shoes.
And today we will be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes The Enemy and The Price. But first, Sony does not understand memes, and I think they just lost a couple $1 million this weekend.
Yeah, so they re-released Morbius, right?
Yeah, and obviously this weekend is the weekend that we're recording this. This comes out like a week later, but...
Right.
People have been making fun of Morbius this whole time, Sony. It's not because it's like a so bad it's good movie. It's nobody saw this movie, nobody asked for this movie, nobody wants this movie. It's the Jeb Bush meme all over again.
It like sure is.
They literally put his head on Jeb in a meme. So I don't know why they would re-release this.
No, when I heard that, I was like, what? Why would they do that? And then I remembered this week at school, because as I work in a high school, I was walking through the hallway and I looked down and there's a piece of paper on the floor and I was like, what is this? So I pick it up and I flip it over and some kid has printed off the Morbius poster and is apparently throwing them about the school. Because later on in the day a kid told me, oh, my friend made a bunch of Morbius posters and printed them off on the school printers. No, it's a meme. It's obviously a meme. Like, that doesn't mean give us more Morbius, you know?
So they made 85,000 on Friday, and I checked it up. We're recording on Sunday, and it looks like they have gotten about 300,000 from this weekend from a re-release. In comparison, Everything Everywhere All at Once is in its 11th week of release and has already made 2 million this weekend.
Yeah, see. And I heard the Top Gun Maverick was doing pretty well, too, which is...
Yeah, I haven't paid attention because I don't care. I never saw the original Top Gun.
I've never seen it either. Everybody says I need to.
Yeah,
but, you know, I'll probably end up seeing the Top Gun movie anyway because my husband wants to, you know, nostalgia and everything.
Sure.
But I have no interest in Morbius, and them re-releasing it did not make me go, oh, I missed out on Morbius the first time. Maybe I can go see it now.
The funniest thing was like a couple weeks ago, there was a Twitch account that was just streaming Morbius like over and over on loop. Yeah. And it took about 12 hours for Twitch to shut them down. But like the funniest thing is that when it was shut down was like right when it got to the credits. So like the guy at Twitch was like, I'm going to finish this movie before I hit the ban button.
That's funny. I was going to ask if you really think they thought they were going to make money off of it. So you think they saw that it was like trending because people were memeing about it and they were like, oh boy, another chance to earn money? You think that really was really what it was?
I did see somebody on Twitter suggest a possibility that there were some execs who were thinking that, and then the exec who made the decision to re-release it was the one who was like, no, you idiots, it's a meme. We're not going to make any money. Do not make a Morbius 2 off of this. Here, I'll show you. We're going to re-release it in theaters, and nobody's going to see it. There. Now you don't have to spend $100 million on another flop.
That is a good point because it is kind of a good litmus test to see if like people are actually interested in the movie or if it's just a bunch of memes, you know, because look at Sonic the Hedgehog. We made so much fun of Sonic the Hedgehog because it looked terrible when it first released the trailer or whatever. We made a bunch of noise about it and then they fixed it. Everybody went, yay. And then a movie that I thought was going to be terrible ended up being a movie that made money and they ended up having a sequel.
And I enjoyed both of those movies very much.
I haven't seen the second one, but the first one was better than it had any right to be.
And I think the second one was better than the first because the second one didn't have as much of a focus on the human characters. It was just actually focusing on like Sonic and Tails and Knuckles. I'm like, that's what I want in a Sonic movie. Morbius is not a so bad it's good movie. This is not a The Room situation. This is just a soulless corporate cash grab that has like, oh, they're
starring
like, oh,
a very uninspired actor. Like I've never like we've talked about Jared Leto before, but I've never really like thought he was an ace actor. He was just a pretty boy that played in a lot of things and was in a band. Like it's not like you can even go like, oh, I just love Jared Leto, so I'm gonna go see Morbius. Nobody says that, you know.
No. The favorite thing that I ever saw with him in it was when he got his face pounded into the cement by Edward Norton. So
he just needed to destroy something beautiful.
So if you enjoy the podcast, consider subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds. You'll get our episodes up to 5 days early. You can get access to a spot on our Discord where you can suggest the small talks for us before we begin, and at the higher tier you'll get your name right at the end of each episode, so feel free if you're feeling so generous.
I mean, unless you want to hear us keep talking about Morbius. So today we're going to be talking about The Enemy. It is the 7th episode of the 3rd season. It aired on the 6th of November 1989. It was written by David Kemper and Michael Piller, and directed by David Carson.
And did you ever see the movie Enemy Mine?
Oh, yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, Dennis Quaid and Lou Gossett Jr.
On a Planet, right? Because it's a Heinlein book, I think, right?
It might have been. I just know that the story itself, it's just two enemy fighter pilots crash on a planet and they're forced to work together and learn each other's culture and stuff like that. And this has a lot of vibes of that, because in this one, Geordi is stranded on a planet with Romulan, and they have at first they're like trying to fight each other, but then they have to like work together to get to be rescued. And meanwhile, the Enterprise is having to deal with a Romulan ship that wants to cross the neutral zone to come get their Romulans. And they have another Romulan that they had like beamed up from the planet who's in sickbay. And the only person who can donate blood or whatever that the Romulan needs to survive is Worf, who won't do it.
Right.
And Worf's story there is pretty interesting, because like you would expect him to be resistant for most of the episode, but then finally like agree to it. But no, he lets him die.
He does. Yeah. Which I thought was really interesting. There's notes in here about like, okay, think of the person that you hate the most. Like, can you think of somebody that you hate? Would you give your blood, even if it wouldn't hurt you in any way, to save that person?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I thought about the whole episode, you know, like once it became an issue. And I wondered if it was because it was 89 and, you know, organ donation cards were, I mean, it was starting to become such a regular thing for everybody to put organ donation. And I know in my younger years, I was resistant to organ donation because I got that from my mom, who would have been, you know, the age to be the target audience for this episode. Right.
Right.
And she's resistant to it for religious reasons. But because when Jesus comes back, she doesn't want her organs flying out of other people. Not even kidding. So that whole like debate I found very interesting. And I wondered if it had anything to do with organ donation.
I don't know. I do know that their rationale for making Worf resist the whole time was that they wanted to show that Worf is not human. They wanted to show that as a Klingon, he has different moral sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they didn't like Michael Dorn at first kind of was resistant to this storyline, but then he understood what they were going for.
But they make sure that we all know that everybody feels he's wrong for doing it, because he has to go through every single like higher officer trying to talk him into it. It felt like, because he had Picard and Beverly, whose hair was magically longer. Try to talk him into it, like, this isn't going to affect you in any way. And they gave him that line of like, this is the lifeblood from my mother and father, like, why would I give it to our sworn enemy that killed my mother and father? You know.
And Riker points out the racism, and he's like, did this Romulan do that? Do all Romulans do that? Is there ever going to be a point where you let go of the hatred? And Worf's just like, sorry, dude, I hate Romulans. So
it made it so weird that he didn't flip by the end, right? Like, because what was the lesson there then? That people who hate people have a good reason because of their culture? Like, I was trying to figure out what the lesson there was.
I don't think it was. I don't necessarily know that it was a lesson. I think it was just showing the difference between Worf and the humans.
Yeah.
And also, it's Worf's hatred of Romulans is something that continues to be a part of his character for a very long time. And so for him to, like, I wouldn't expect him to, in the span of an episode, let go of it. It's something that's going to take longer for him to deal with.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it is the people who killed his parents, and especially in Klingon culture, they hold on to those grudges, because we've seen them hold on to them in other episodes about other things, But I thought this was an interesting episode for the way that it opened. Had a very dramatic opening. It wasn't like the normal kind of opening where, everyday life on the Starship Enterprise is happening. It started with, the big storm on the KV planet and nobody can hear each other and they're all yelling over each other, and it was very dramatic opening. And then I noticed, I was like, oh, it's the boy band. I was like, oh, no, it's not the boy band because Geordi's there instead of Data. And I was like, I wonder why Geordi's on the planet. And then he immediately falls into a hole. And I was like, oh, that's why Geordi's on the planet.
I thought that they did a very clever thing with, and I assume that this is why that they had it be a Geordi episode, is because the electromagnetic storms on the planet are like wreaking havoc with people's nervous systems. And so even though Geordi's visor is fully working, the interface breaks down and he can't see anymore. And so like he has to talk the Romulan through like connecting the visor to the tricorder so that they can go and track like the neutrino probe that they launched.
But not before they have him do the blind man with the glasses routine when he first falls down the cave.
Oh, he always does that. But also the Romulan was injured because he had like rocks fall on him, and so he can barely walk. And so Geordi has to carry him, but Geordi's blind. So Geordi carries him while he has to tell Geordi where to go. And it was just a great way of just showing, okay, each of them are injured in different ways and how they are having to rely on each other for help.
Right, yeah. I loved the relationship building between them because while they're up there trying to talk Worf into saving the dude with his blood, they're being lied to about more Romulans being on the planet because Picard's been asking the Romulan guy that has now come into the neutral zone. Or did they come all the way into Federation space? I think they eventually come all the way into Federation. Yeah. Yep. And I was surprised at that. So I figured this guy must be important. The one that died, I figured, and then there was the second one on the planet, right? Because is getting that guy back worth coming over the border? I thought he was going to end up maybe being someone important or something, because you would think they would just be like, oh, well, he'll be tortured to death or whatever it is Romulans hold dear, Well,
so there's the fact that those two were already in Federation space to begin with. Like
that's true.
It was speculated that they were using this planet as like a forward station for like, an incursion into Federation space, because like there's no other reason you'd set up on this planet. It's like inhospitable. But I think it's the Romulans did not want those people to fall into Federation hands because potentially they might get something out of them in interrogation. So they want to make sure that they can come back and get them. That's so that true. They don't get that information. Obviously, the cover story is, they had a navigation malfunction and accidentally drifted half a light year into Federation territory or whatever.
Which Picard rejects. He even says, I reject your explanation.
Romulans lie like we breathe.
Especially to the Federation because they're their sworn enemy or whatever.
But the idea of Romulan secrets is something that's very integral to their culture. There's actually in Star Trek Picard they established that Romulans have 3 names. Because basically even their names are secret. They have a public name, and then they have a name that their family uses, and then they have their true name, which is something that they only will tell to like their loved one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So yeah, Romulans keep secrets, and so this whole mission is about them keeping secrets about what they're doing in Federation space. And the subcommander of the Romulan ship, Tomalak, we see him a couple times.
In the future?
Yeah, he's a recurring character, and he's played by Andreas Katsoulis, who was also on Babylon 5. He played Ambassador Jakar on that show, who's one of the best characters on the show, and he's a great actor.
I've heard the name before, yeah.
I think he passed about 15 years ago from lung cancer. Or emphases. I know he was a smoker, so it was some smoking complication that he died from. But I enjoy his performance. He comes back multiple times. I think he'll even show up as like other characters in other shows as well. But I really like him.
Yeah, I did. I liked him I thought he did a Romulan really well. I really liked his character. I did have a bunch of different like pop culture references while watching Geordi pop into my head while he was like climbing around the cave. For one, he played Minecraft. And he looked around and he dug around and he found some gems and he turned them into some climbing sticks. And I was good, now go punch a tree. Yeah, I know. I was pretty proud of him. At first I was like, is he making a shiv? I was like, what is he making?
Well, they could have been used as shivs, but no, he just made a couple of climbing spikes so he could get out of that hole he fell in.
Exactly, just like I do I don't do that in Minecraft, but same thing, right? Like I thought, but it also got me thinking about the Hunger Games, because I was thinking about how when they hide in the cave at night, her and PETA, and then I was wondering if the entire like main cast of TNG had to play in the Hunger Games, who would win? And I think, I don't know, I think
War for Data.
Okay, Worf is a good choice. Data would be so rational, right? Like he would so he'd be able to be like, well, the statistics say if I pick this berry or whatever, right? Like he'd be able to use his brain to figure his way through it, and Worf would be able to like muscle his way through it. I don't know. Also, it's just something I kept thinking about.
Keep in mind, it's called the Hunger Games, and Data doesn't need to eat.
That's true. That's true. So that came up while I was watching it. So the Minecraft and the Hunger Games things. But yeah, you're right. I think it'd probably be Worf. Because he'd just survive because he's Worf.
He'd survive, and if he's told, it's only one can survive, Worf would be like the first to be like, yeah, okay, I'll kill y'all.
It's gonna be me. Yeah. He wouldn't really have to think about it.
He would exhaust other options of getting out before he would resort to killing them, but like he would ultimately
But in the end, he would make sure that he was the one. Yeah, because it would, I know.
Or he would be happy to die in combat against somebody, because that is a good Klingon way to go, but it wouldn't be an easy fight.
And it wouldn't be something he'd throw. He would actually fight his hardest. And I think it was like him versus like Riker or Picard. They're like compassion as human beings would get too much of them, and I think Worf would still end up winning. Plus he has the physical prowess, right? Mm-hmm. So Wesley was really smart this episode, and so we got to thank you, Wesley. Or he's like, Wesley Crusher, thank you, Wes, or whatever. And I was like, thank you, Wesley.
Because Wesley came up with the idea of, we send a probe down to the planet that emits a neutrino beam because Geordi will be able to see it. And I don't know how Geordi knew that it was Wesley specifically who thought up that, but I guess nobody else knows how to use neutrinos on the Enterprise.
He probably just knew that Wesley was smart enough to think outside the box or whatever, because it's always Wesley that comes up with those. But yeah, that was a little cheesy that he was like, Wesley, all right, good job, you came through when there's hundreds of other people on that ship.
And it is good thinking, though, because like he tailored a solution specific to Geordi.
Right.
Like, if it had been somebody else stranded on the planet, they'd have to find some other way. They'd probably have, like, I don't know, they could have made some just visible beacon. But
if it had been a normal cold open where we open on the ship, it would have been something like him and Wesley sitting around talking about how, oh, look, I can see the neutrino beams in that petri dish there, and then having it come in later.
I also wonder, too, if the reason that they're like, well, if we do the neutrino beam, it might have been just something that specifically only Geordi could see it, so that if there were other Romulans there who might, like, see the probe and use it to, like, lay in wait in ambush for him, they wouldn't be able to because they wouldn't be able to see the beam.
That's true. So he decides to take the tactic with the Romulan of annoying him to death, I guess. I don't know, because he's like, shoes are getting full of sand. Don't you hate that? I never lie when I got sand in my shoes. Like, he's doing this real, like, familiarity, like, oh, buddy, we're here together. Let's just be friends kind of attitude. And I was like, okay, this is annoying. And then he got over it eventually.
He also lied and said that the Federation already intercepted the signal, and there's an entire fleet of Starfleet ships.
Oh, that's right, he did.
Yeah.
Well, he knew he was talking to a Romulan, I guess. So he's like, "Oh, I'll play their game."
Yeah.
This episode also saw one of Deanna's worst stupid observations, which was there's great hostility behind his smile. And I was like, "Yes, Deanna, we can all see that." Like,
Marina Sirtis was very unhappy with this episode because there was in a draft version of the script, it was both her and Geordi that were down on the planet. And and then like once Geordi got blinded, it was her who like incapacitated the Romulan.
Oh, interesting.
So she was like looking forward to doing some action on the show, and then
instead she got to be Captain Obvious like usual. Yeah, I'd be annoyed too.
Stuck her on the bridge and had her say, "This hostile person is hostile."
Right, exactly. Look at that hostile person. They're hostile. Yeah. Oh, that was the other pop culture reference though, was Gollum. That was my other one that came up while I was watching, and I was like, "Oh, he's digging around the cave. Maybe he'll find Gollum." Yeah, like the Hobbit. I didn't hate this episode, though. I thought it was interesting.
It's a really good episode.
I thought it was interesting to see the Romulans and how they actually work, rather than, like, we've only seen them 2 or 3 times, right? Mm-hmm. And in the show, and most of the time it's been like, oh no, Romulans. Oh no, is it the Romulans? And this time it was like, oh, hey, boy, it's Romulans, So I liked being able to see that.
I noticed, too, when Beverly is working on the Romulan, she's like, well, I expected their physiology to be identical to Vulcan's, but there's a lot of subtle differences that I have to make adjustments for. And right. I think Romulans left Vulcan about 2,000 years ago. I don't know the exact timeline on that. A lot of that is just kind of established in like book lore, so it's not like established canon.
Right.
There could have been some episode.
Are the books not considered canon?
No. The only things that are canon are the TV shows and the movies.
Okay. Because, Star Wars keeps changing their mind on that stuff. So
yeah, Star Wars. Well, with Star Wars canon, it was like everything was canon, and then Disney bought it and said, okay, only these things are canon, and anything that comes out after that is also canon.
Yeah.
Except for Lego Star Wars. Lego Star Wars is not canon.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because it's so weird. I mean, it was a pretty straightforward episode in general. Like, it was like, okay, they debated their way out. I consider it like Geordi. I mean, as much as his like shtick, I don't find interesting, like the whole got sand in my shoes, thing. I did think it was good that he built the relationship with the Romulan on the planet to the point where he's going blind because his visors stopped working because his eyes aren't working or whatever. The visor works, but his eyes aren't working.
Right.
And the Romulan, and he says to the Romulan, then you'll have to be my eyes. And now, granted, Romulans have not killed Geordi's parents, but it was an interesting juxtaposition to Worf like refusing to do something that wouldn't actually harm him in any way to save the Romulan that was on the ship.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was interesting we had those 2 juxtapositions between the 2 characters. And I as much as like my 2022 human brain wants to say it was wrong of Worf not to give his blood over or whatnot, I don't know. Seems kind of like he made the decision, and I kind of liked that they respected his body, his choice, even if they tried to guilt him into it a million times.
They also, one thing that I noticed is that when Worf talked to the Romulan said he would rather die than have Klingon blood in his veins.
Yes, he decided to be super racist when he walked up to him to offer him he said they want something like they want you to fix you with my blood or whatever, know.
But I mean, him saying that could be read as he refused the treatment anyway. So
right, because if Worf had agreed, was the guy going to? Yeah, that's a good point.
One thing that I noticed, this is more just like kind of like a production detail, but when they first beam down to the planet, the flashlights that they're holding, they're not like holding flashlights like we have today, but they're like these little like boxy things that they're holding up. And I remember at the time thinking those don't really look practical. Nobody would hold flashlights like that. But then I was thinking about cell phones, and before our cell phones all had really bright flash things that we could use as the flashlight, when we just turn the screen on and hold that.
Yeah, we used to do that all the time. Yeah.
There was also one moment where I noticed there's a close-up of Riker holding his, and you can actually see a wire running down from the flashlight into his sleeve. And I don't think that wire is supposed to be visible, but it seems like, he must have had like a battery pack attached to his belt or something that it just ran through. But I think it's supposed to just have the battery in the thing, because we could do that now. Why would you need a wire for that? So I would say that's probably just more of a production goof. That
they probably didn't want to make a working flashlight that was that shape to make it easier or whatever. But yeah, it probably wasn't supposed to be visible, but I did not notice. The next episode we're going to talk about is The Price. It's the 8th episode of the 3rd season. It first aired on the 13th of November, 1989. It was written by Hannah Louise Shearer and directed by Robert Shearer, but spelled differently, so I don't think they're related.
We get a Deanna-focused episode.
We do, and at first I was annoyed at this Deanna-focused episode, but by the end I was like, yay, Deanna.
Yep. So there's a wormhole that is purportedly the first known stable wormhole, and this species, the Barzans, discovered it, and so they're taking bids for other races to administrate the opening of it, because the Barzans
don't have the resources.
They don't have the resources to do it themselves. And so a bunch of delegates from different species are coming to negotiate, and there's one guy who's representing some species called the Chrysalians, but he
I hate him.
His name is Devanani Rawl, and he's ostensibly human, but as we find out later, he's a quarter betazoid, and he did not disclose that, but he uses his empathic abilities to his advantage.
Did you recognize the actor?
I did not.
So he's one of that guy, because he has like 120 credits to his name, and he's been in like lots of like one episode of Law and Order and like that kind of stuff. But I really felt like I knew him. So I searched through he's Lloyd Braun from Seinfeld, the one that George Costanza's mom would always be like, why can't you be more like Lloyd Braun?
I didn't watch enough Seinfeld, so I don't know that reference.
I just rewatched it a year ago. I think that's why it was fresh in my head. But yeah, so Blue Eyes there was Lloyd Braun, the one that George Costanza's mom always wanted him to be like. Mm-hmm. And that's it. But yeah, he was terrible. I disliked him. He was so creepy.
He shows up, and like Deanna is obviously like immediately like you can see she sees something in him. But then like he like shows up unannounced to her quarters
and just starts touching her.
And just if you watch that scene, just her body language, you're just like, I had to pause and like take a 10-minute break, because I'm like, I just watched an assault.
It made me feel so creepy. Like, it made me feel gross.
She was freezing up.
Yeah, I know.
It was
so gross to watch. It was like, it reminded me of the time that I had that happen at work with a guy that was my boss. He would come up and touch my hair and come up and touch my neck and then whisper things into my ear. I eventually got him fired, but he was the highest up person at the company, like that I could reach easily. So I had to wait till a district employee came in, and he was doing that kind of stuff to me, and it reminded me of that so much. Like, he thought he was really suave, just like this Devanani guy did.
But that's the problem, is that in this episode, that's how it's played. It's played like he's the suave guy that she's just completely taken with.
But it wasn't. Like, I don't know if maybe Marina Sirtis just wasn't into the scene or something, because her body language said, stop touching me, Yeah. I don't know. It was weird. The scenes between them were hard to watch, because it didn't feel like Deanna truly felt any of the things she was saying. And I wonder if that was just Marina Sirtis's like not being able to get into the role because she just knew the guy was a creep, or I don't know. Like, the whole thing was creepy, though. I know I sent you a message in the middle of the episode of a picture of my nose that says, I hate this man. But I do. I hate him. And I knew he was using his betazoid empathy, I guess is the word. But his mind tricks for his gain. Like, I could see that from the very beginning. Even with Deanna, he was using it, because she's all like doing the Sookie Sackhouse, oh, I can't read you thing, and I was like, oh my God, Deanna, like, I don't know. And then there was him trying to toxic masculinity Riker. That was a great scene. That was one of the best scenes. Yeah. As much as this episode made me feel creepy the whole time, like something was crawling all over my whole body. That scene when he laughs and says Deanna is the woman that will, like, the one woman that could make you set your life on the right course, or whatever it is he said. I was like, yeah, that's right.
Because after the first season episode, when Riker was a little upset that Deanna was engaged, after that, he's pretty much gotten over his jealousy
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like he's coming in and being like, oh, I've got what you could have had. And he's just like, Deanna is her own person. And I'm perfectly happy for her to have whatever relationship she wants. And if she wants you, then that's probably a good thing for you, dude.
Right. Like you're not the prize here, dude. She is, like, and I thought that was so good to put him in his place, especially because Riker was the first one of our regular cast members to be like, we need to watch out for that Devanani guy,
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you do. He's so awful. I hate him. But to me, it was pretty obvious from the very beginning. He was using his telepathy or whatever he had. I didn't figure out he was a quarter betazoid, but I probably should, because they cut from Deanna, a close-up of her dark black eyes to a close-up of his blue eyes. And I wondered, why are they comparing their eyes? But I didn't catch on that it meant he was going to be a quarter. I know, that's why until I figured out his name, I kept calling him Blue Eyes. All my notes say Blue Eyes because I wasn't sure what his name was at first. But I mean, there was one scene where they're post or pre-sex, I can't tell, and he doesn't have a shirt on, and I'm just sitting there the whole time like, put a shirt on. Like, it was just making me uncomfortable. I don't know, and I'm comfortable with sex, like, it's not so, but if that setup of that episode, or of him being a partner to Deanna in the episode, is him being creepy and touching her hair and her body language saying, please don't do this, and I almost wondered if he had some sort of telepathic control over her.
I kind of wonder if that was the case, if it was like him putting on the Betazoid charm or something, or maybe she was just instinctively drawn to him because he's Betazoid or something like that.
Right, yeah. Which I think is what they were trying to say is, oh, she's drawn to him because he's like her or whatever.
Yeah. Funnily enough, the sexiest scene in the show is not between Devanani and Deanna. It's between Beverly and Deanna.
Oh my God, yes. Those leotards. Like, first it's just Bev, and I was like, oh. I was like, I didn't expect to have feelings in the middle of this episode. I was like, I didn't know I had these kind of feelings for Bev. And then I was like, what is this leotard? And then suddenly Deanna runs in, and they're doing that 80s aerobics thing that my mom used to use me as her partner for. We did that thing where we held arms and like pulled back and forth like they do, because it was very popular in the 80s.
And I gotta say, those leotards look so impractical, because first it's like a two-piece thing. You've got the like the cotton
especially Deanna's that had that weird little strap between her boobs.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is that like you would think for this kind of exercise you'd want to be wearing a sports bra, but their outfits are both designed with like boob windows.
I know, just to make sure that it accentuates the boobs.
Yeah, and I'm just like, that doesn't look like it would be comfortable for the kind of exercise you're doing. Or
practical. Yeah, I know, because you want your boobs supported when you're doing exercise, because you don't want them to like hurt. That's the whole point of a sports bra, not to accentuate them and make them look bigger and fuller. But yes, it was a pretty sexy scene. I was like, wow, too bad Tasha isn't here.
Well, and they're talking about sex the whole time, too. So,
I know. Like, the writers or director or whatever knew what they were doing with that scene.
Unfortunately, doesn't pass the Bechdel test, but...
No, it doesn't, but that's okay. I don't think it was meant to. Another one of my favorite moments in this episode was right in the beginning at the cold open. For whatever reason, Deanna's having a bad day, and she goes to her quarters, and she's like, computer, I would like a real ice cream sundae. And the computer's like, and she's having a debate with the computer over whether she can do this. And she's sitting down to read, and what the computer told her were 3 communiques from her mother. Like, there's 3 communiques from your mother. And I was like, yes, of course, Loxana emails 3 times a day. And then secondly, her mother is telling her that she has 3 communiques from her mother. And I thought that was freaking funny. But like that, my favorite episode, and this was almost my "and I'm Ari" joke for today, was, God forbid I should miss my first look at the wormhole, because that was just, I have never seen Deanna be that sarcastic, but it was just so funny.
She's obviously having a bad day, and then as soon as she goes into 10 forward and Riker's there and takes her arm, she's like, please just tell me there's chocolate here.
I know. I was like, yes, me too, Deanna. And then of course she walks into the room where Mr. Blue Eyes is, and that's the whole rest of the episode. Because what in the Danielle Steele novel was going on in some of these scenes? Like, it was so boring to watch. Like, it wasn't even interesting dialogue that was happening. It was literally like that 80s kind of dreamy filter felt like it was going on, you know? And then they were just having not so meaningful conversations about nothing that were taking forever, you know?
Kind of feels like they were like searching. I mean, for me, it looked like it was just two people who had the hots for each other, but there was nothing much else going on there. And you can kind of see her realizing it as it goes on. She's just like, this guy isn't that trustworthy. That's kind of messed up that he wouldn't tell anyone that he's empathic. And they actually have that conversation where he tries to compare. He's like, well, you don't tell like a Romulan ship that you're sensing what they're doing. And she's like,
right. He tries to gaslight her into believing that what she does is exactly the same thing that he does.
She's like, I'm doing mine to keep my ship safe. You're doing yours for profit. And he even says, he's like, yeah, exactly. What you're doing is life and death. I'm just making business deals. There's nobody gets hurt when I'm doing it. I'm like, dude, you're a capitalist. What do you mean nobody gets hurt?
But it all leads to one of Deanna's best scenes, which is the end on the Enterprise bridge, on the bridge, where she gets to take him to task in front of everybody. And that was really good. It was a really good, and she had this amazing dress with instead of it being V-neck, it pulled over to one side that I really liked too.
She wears that a lot going forward, but I always thought it was just a little weird because it's like an uneven neckline.
You get to see one side of the cleavage.
Yeah.
It's more modest because you don't see both sides. But yeah, basically, so we forgot to talk about the B plot, which is that the Ferengi show up to this negotiation about the thing, and then they just wreak havoc because they're Ferengis.
Well, they do like a soft assassination of the Federation representative.
He's not dead. They're just making him quiet for a couple days. I think that's what they said.
That's why it's a soft assassination. They just put him out of commission. And then when Data and Geordi are going to go study the wormhole to make sure that, examining the merchandise, making sure that it is what the Barzans say, the Ferengi protest. They're like, oh, you just want to get it for yourself. It's like, you can come along. And so they send 2 probes in. And that's when Data and Geordi realize, oh, this wormhole is only stable at one end, because they thought they were going to the Gamma Quadrant, but then they end up in the Delta Quadrant. They're like, okay, we got to get out of here before that thing closes up. And
they gave them an out because they said, oh, they couldn't have known, their equipment couldn't have. But I wondered if there was some deception on the part of the Barzans.
I don't think there was. I think they just, like they said, the Barzans don't even have manned spacecraft. They just were using probes to get it, which to me is like, okay, why are the Federation even talking to them then? Maybe they've got warp drive on those probes, but just no man. I don't know.
That's true, because it would break the Prime Directive.
The Ferengi decide, well, we're just going to stay behind and still get our readings, and Geordi and Data are like, all right, I guess have fun being 70,000 light years from home. And they go back through the wormhole, and then the wormhole runs away from the Ferengi. And that's not the last we see of those Ferengi.
I had to look up and see if we'd seen them before, but they were new Ferengi, right?
They're new Ferengi, but keep in mind, they are now stranded in the Delta Quadrant. And what is Voyager about?
Oh, that's right. I knew Delta Quadrant sounded familiar. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Good point. Huh.
So we actually get a follow-up episode in Voyager where they find those 2 Ferengi. And
oh, interesting. That's so smart on the part of the writers. Yeah. Yep. So this is the first time that I thought the Ferengis were written annoyingly, but in a way that I could stand having them on screen. They were obnoxious and they were annoying, and they came on and they demanded chairs for all 3 of them, even though there was only one delegate. Yeah, I know. He's like, get us chairs. And Picard's like, no, one of you, and you can have my chair, and then when they assassinate soft assassinate the Federation guy, I wrote in my notes, oh no, not the negotiator. Whoever will negotiate now, because it's not like we don't have. And then it also felt very Dixon Hill novel-y. He says something like, oh, this is interesting. And I'm like, yeah, oh, this sounds like a Dixon Hill novel, Picard. And he's like, well, I can't remember why he says Riker has to do it, but he chooses Riker to be the negotiator.
Picard is hosting the negotiations.
Oh,
so
that's right.
Yeah.
It'd be a conflict. Yeah. That bad sex scene where he won't put his shirt on that I was talking about reminded me of that bad scene in episode 2 between Padme and Anakin, you know? Do you know what I'm talking about?
One?
In the bedroom?
There are so many.
Before she tries to get assassinated by the assassin and they're in the bedroom and her hair's all big because it's a dark bedroom. Like, I don't know, for some reason. And I was like, the melodrama is on par with Annie and Padme, you know? And I was like, but maybe that's what it was just the melodrama, because it was very melodramatic during their sex scenes. If you can call that pillow talk scenes, not sex scenes, I guess. But
they were also doing a lot of that, like, TOS era soft focus to make everyone look smoother and prettier, specifically in those scenes. And then like the music cues, honestly, the music cues were doing a lot of heavy lifting, because like I don't think those actors had the best chemistry. And like when they first see each other, like in 10 Forward, if you get rid of the music cue, they're just staring at each other. It's the
intensely
music cue.
Yeah.
It's the music cue that tells you, oh, okay, they like each other. They didn't have the chemistry, and honestly, Marina Sirtis did not play it like she wanted to have chemistry with him in the first place. And
that's why I think it might have been on purpose. He also really wanted to be Jimmy Stewart really bad with the way he enunciated and spoke his lines and stuff, especially towards the end when they're on the bridge. I was getting serious, like Jimmy Stewart delivery from him.
I can see where you get that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like him at all, but I don't know that I was supposed to. I mean, maybe I was at the beginning, but I didn't like him from the second they showed him. I was like, ew, what's that guy? And then he talks like a used car salesman.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't think you're supposed to like him. I think he's supposed to be an untrustworthy person. There was one thing that I noticed, though, because the end, because basically he's just been using his empathic abilities to sense, what the other delegations are thinking and use that to his advantage. And so he negotiates with the Ferengi that they'll get indignant and like fire on the wormhole, even though that won't do anything to the wormhole, and insist that if they can't have the wormhole, nobody can. And then he'll be like, hey, listen, if the Chrysalians get it, we'll give Ferengi free passage, and use that to sell to the Barzans. See, the Chrysalians were peaceful. The Federation and the Ferengi, they're kind of at conflict with each other. You don't really want to have to deal with that now, do you?
Right. And he had bought out that other alien faction as well.
But Deanna is sensing, like, when he negotiates with the Ferengi over the view screen, she senses, wait, neither of them are tense here. They're playing an act. And the weird thing about that scene is that she was having trouble reading him from like the start.
But all of a sudden she could. Yeah, I know.
But not just that, she was reading the Ferengi. And this is the only episode in which she's been able to read a Ferengi. Basically, I think it's established in the show.
I forgot about that. That's right. She can't read them. That's why she was useless in the first Ferengi episode. Yeah.
It's like, I think they just forgot that Betazoids couldn't read Ferengi in this episode. But like, I'm pretty sure it comes back up later that, they can't read Ferengi. So
maybe she was just acting on her intuition. Because, I mean, her intuition at this point of Devani is bad. I mean, she should know at this point that he's bad. And then the Ferengi obviously almost always have negative intentions, So maybe she couldn't really read this. I'm just trying to help the writers out here. Maybe she was just acting on her intuition, because it was pretty obvious. It was one of those Captain Obvious moments of neither of these are being like, because even the Ferengi just was like, because when Devani comes out and he comes on the bridge and he's like, it's okay, I've just sealed the deal to own the wormhole and we'll give you rights. The Ferengi immediately goes, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah, anybody can read that you guys planned this ahead of time, because otherwise Ferengi never agreed to anything quickly, right?
Yeah.
So like he would have had to be like, well, this is what we can give you. And then if he had just offered the thing straight out, they're master negotiators. That's their whole thing. They would have bargained for more, And so to me, it was pretty obvious that he had arranged it with the Ferengi. So I don't know. But I did like her standing up to him. And I did like that even though he was the cute boy that put a spell on her or whatever, when it came to right or wrong, she was able to go, no, you're a bad person. Stop being bad, Yep. So I think that's everything for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
Until next time.
Live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at Rest Both Worlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.